This seriously happened to me last year. I was home alone. My two older brothers are always in our local church, which is very near to our house. It's only like 1 street away. We also had no electricity. We couldn't pay our phone bill on time. So I was home alone. I'll have to admit, I'm not in the church with my brothers because I'm too lazy when it comes to religions and things that need me to go out and talk to people. So yeah, I was home alone, no electricity, just using my phone, drawing stuff in my sketchbook, listening to music, etc. My brother got home, and he went straight into his bedroom, no word or anything at all. So after a couple of hours, it was getting to be nighttime. We do have candles, but I couldn't find them, so I asked my brother, who was still in his bedroom. He left his room in a rush and went outside the house after he told me to follow him to fix the electricity. I was like, "What's your plan?" And he asked me to get the screwdriver and pliers. He taught me how to get back electricity when it's cut off. He told me to cut this hanging thing, and it was a lock for this electricity meter or something. He told me to remove the seal after the lock and pulled out the whole cover. This revealed a plastic chip that was in between this metal that's supposed to be in contact with the cover I just removed. So I removed that chip and put back the cover, and the lights went on. I was like, oh wow, that's it? That was easy. We went back inside, and my brother went straight back to the bedroom again. Then I received a call on my phone. It was from my brother. "We're gonna spend the night here. You should come. We've got electricity and food." He was definitely the one who was speaking. Of course, I know his voice. I know my brother's voice. His voice was the same as before when he was helping me fix the electricity. I asked him, "Where are you?" And he told me he was in the church. I said, "Stop, you're obviously joking, you're so lame." I wanted to go to his bedroom just to throw a pillow at him, but I realized I wasn't even hearing anything from his bedroom while I was talking to him. He was talking normal, he wasn't being quiet. I should have heard him inside, but there was no voice at all. I couldn't run, my legs turned so weak. I didn't want to make any sound at all. I slowly, slow as a snail, grabbed my pants and slowly walked outside while looking around every corner. I was tearing up so bad, my lips were shaking. I thought to myself, if this is a prank, god damn, I'm such a piece of cake. But it wasn't a prank. I arrived at the church trembling, crying even harder when I saw both of my brothers. They had never seen me cry like that before. I'm even crying while typing this out. This has got to be the most traumatic memory of my life. I was with someone who I'm not even entirely sure is human. That was not my brother. I briefly spoke to this person about what they saw, and they explained that this is something that still affects them to this day. I can't blame them at all. This wasn't just something they saw out of the corner of their eye. This was like an entire interaction. Please bear with me as I try to explain this, since I'm still freaked out with the realization of what could have happened to me. I was waiting at home for my order to pick up PC parts, so I was just cleaning around the house. It was beginning to rain heavily outside, and I clearly remember seeing out of the corner of my eye a huge, shadowy figure standing in front of my front door. It was taller than the height of the door, and it was only there for a fraction of a second before it seemed to disappear. 15 minutes later, I get a text. 2:53 p.m. Your order is ready for collection. It was raining heavily by this point, and I was disappointed that I'd have to go through the rain with my PC parts, but it wasn't enough to deter me. As I get ready to leave, I open the front door and notice a single black crow's feather on my doorstep, precisely centered and pointing at me. I have no idea what that emotion was or how to describe it, but I turned around and called Centercom to ask them to hold my order until Friday. I convinced myself that I was doing the right thing and that I could wait a few more days so I didn't have to go through the rain. That happened a month and a half ago, and I just now saw an article about a truck accident that killed a man and injured others on the day that I was due to pick up my parts. The truck crashed into the cars in front of it after pulling up behind a turning lane and failing to stop in time. Now that I've looked into it, I see that it was at the intersection I would have driven through. The freaky part to me is that at 3 o'clock p.m. is when it happened. If I pull up my map, it takes me 5 minutes to get to that intersection, and that's where I would have been on that exact day at the exact time if I had left when I planned. If I wasn't warned, or if I didn't decide to postpone my order pickup to Friday, that would have been me. I was in a group of 6 people a couple years back. It consisted of myself and my other cousins. We were around 15 or 17 years old, just doing dumb teen stuff. During this specific night, we were planning to hike the Anaheim Coves, an infamous trail which had the reputation of being haunted. The trail followed a river that ran through all the way to a baseball stadium. The hike went normally, and we didn't notice much. We were laughing and messing around, typical stuff you'd do on a hike. We began to notice that there were a lot of frogs or toads or whatever they were covering the trail that we were following. We didn't think anything of it, even throwing rocks at them. As we progressed, we started to see something very unexpected. The frogs or toads started showing up half mutilated. I mean, half of the frogs' bodies were just bitten or cut clean off. There were a lot of these half frog bodies. I mean, a lot. We kind of got startled, but continued. As we were nearing the baseball stadium, which marked the end of the trail, we had to pass under a bridge. As I said earlier, the trail follows a river. Said river also passes underneath the bridge. As we were passing underneath, we hear whistling coming from the river, which was to our left. There was an old man with this white long beard. He was very skinny, almost anorexic, I'd say. He was on this sort of makeshift boat and was sitting on it, using a stick as a paddle to flow through the river. We just stood on the trail, looking at him. I heard my cousin Andrew say under his breath, "What the fuck?" As he slowly passed all 6 of us, he turns and throws something at us. It was one of those fucking frogs, cut in half. We never did finish the hike. Right after that happened, all of us freaked the fuck out and jogged the whole way back to the start of the trail. Alright. What the fuck? Most of these stories seem to have some sort of like a supernatural implication to them, but this sounds like it was just some like sicko out there. Either way, I did do some research on the Anaheim Coves area, and it definitely does seem to be haunted based on the local legends, so I don't know, you be the judge. This happened to me when I was a kid, maybe around the year 2001. I live in England, but spent the first 7 years in Carrickfergus, Northern Ireland. At the time, I was an only child, and although I had a couple of friends, I was a pretty lonely kid. Lonely but happy. I would play a lot on my own, you know how kids do, making up stuff, somehow being entertained for hours. When I think back, though, I remember something weird. I would talk to someone. I can't tell you what they look like. I don't remember. My mom put it down to an imaginary friend. A friend I had started to call Noog. Nothing too spooky, until one day, my mom came in my room and she was furious. I had drawn on my bedroom walls, bearing in mind she had spent hundreds of pounds decorating my room and I had this cool pink glittery wallpaper. So, yeah, she was pissed off. She asked me, "What's this? Why have you drawn this?" Pointing at a face I'd drawn. I reply, "Mom, Noog doesn't have a face. He needed one, so I've drawn him a face." When my mom tells this story to family, she gets freaked out, especially by the next part. She asks, "Oh, does he? And where is Noog?" I scoff at her and say, "Silly mommy. He's standing right behind you." A decade later, I'm around 14 or 15. I don't have an imaginary friend anymore. I wake up one day and my mom comes in my room. "I need to tell you something," she says. I get ready to listen and man, I was not expecting what she was about to say. "So I had a dream last night. I was arguing with your sister's dad and a boy stepped in and made him go away. Do you remember Noog?" The name made me freeze up a little. "Yeah, I do," I say. "Well, it was him." "How do you know it was him?" "He said she can't see me anymore. We used to play together. I miss her, but she can't see me anymore." To this day, I have questions. What was Noog? Why didn't he have a face? Why did my mom see him in her dream? Surely, if it was me he wanted to talk to, he'd come to my dream. Maybe he can't? All I know is I take kids a little more serious when they say their imaginary friends are real and not made up. When I was a senior in high school, I, a female 17, had moved out of my parents' home and in with one of my best friends, also a female, 19. A few months before I moved, I had been waking up at least once a week to a very tall shadow figure with a purple aura around it. I would be able to sit up in bed and look at it, but if I flinched or blinked at all, it would just be gone. I was positive it wasn't from sleep paralysis because I've had that plenty of times as well. I got somewhat used to it after months of waking up to the feeling of being watched, but I could never seem to keep calm while it was happening. I would be so startled after it happened that I wouldn't be able to fall back asleep. I had told my friend about it before moving in, and she thought I was just joking or trying to scare her because she never experienced anything paranormal before. After I was all moved in, everything seemed normal, and I hadn't woken up to anything watching me for over a month. One night, I had a dream that the figure had pulled the window screen out of my window and was crawling into my room. I woke up and was a little freaked out. I closed my window and blinds and just got up to go to school because I didn't really want to sleep after that. A couple of days went by, and I awoke late one night to the feeling of being watched again. I sat up looking towards the doorway to see the figure standing by the closed door again. I flinched, closing my eyes, and it was gone. I told my roommate that the figure was back, and we talked about it for a little bit. A few weeks later, I went downstairs to grab a snack for my roommate and I because we were watching movies together upstairs. Every single cabinet in the kitchen was open. I called for her because I really wanted to assume that she had left all the cabinets open when she had brought home groceries that evening. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. We closed up the cabinet doors and retrieved our snacks, but we were both a little unnerved. She asked me later if I was messing with her, and I reminded her that I had been upstairs the entire evening before going downstairs. A few days later, I woke up to her opening my door in a panic, saying she had seen the shadow standing outside of her door when she woke up. She described the same thing I would see, with the only exception being that it was standing on the other side of her door in the hallway looking at her before it disappeared. I was relieved that I wasn't alone in what I had seen, and she finally believed what I had been experiencing. Later that month, we kept coming down the stairs in the morning to have cabinets and drawers open, and things just started feeling off if either of us were alone in the house. My friend ended up calling one of her very spiritual friends to come bless the house and ask whatever it was to leave us alone. It seemed to work, because neither of us ever saw it again. I was having trouble sleeping one night, and I couldn't figure out why. I almost felt overwhelmed or depressed. I would like to note that I didn't have any medical conditions like anxiety or depression. I'm just a completely normal guy. I was finally able to get to sleep, and I had a dream that still haunts me to this day. I was running through my house, but it wasn't my house. All the furniture was different, but it was the same building. After running, I end up in my bedroom, but I'm not in my bed. My bed isn't even there. It is instead replaced with a hospital bed. I look closer and I see that there's a person in it. I recognize the person as my cousin, Craig. He lays there, not moving. Then he sits up and looks at me. All of a sudden, I wake up, and it's 5:15 in the morning, 15 minutes before my alarm would go off. I get ready and head to work a little early, all the while thinking about that unsettling dream I just had. At around noon, I get a call at my desk. It was my mother. Craig was dead. He had overdosed the previous night, and his girlfriend found him. I'm not sure if this was a glitch or my cousin trying to contact me in his final moments, but whatever it was, it has stuck with me for years. These sort of premonition dreams have always kind of interested me. Otherwise, this would have to be a pretty big coincidence, right? As with the rest of the stories in this video, there's nowhere to go for answers. We're just left to question these experiences, never quite sure if there was really anything behind what they saw. When I was around 5 or 6, me and my sister had a shared Kindle Fire to play Minecraft and Angry Birds. Since we only had one, we would play on it together on the couch and take turns. I remember one day, I was sitting on the couch with my sister and my mom was doing something in the kitchen. Around this time, my parents were getting a divorce, so my dad was probably off doing something, but he wasn't in the house. Me and my sister got called for lunch, and when we came back, we opened up the Kindle. There was a picture of us from just minutes ago sitting on the couch with the Kindle in our hands. We thought this was funny at the time, and we showed it to our mom. She took the Kindle from us and started observing the image. Then she said that Kindle time was over and to go do something else. At the time, we didn't think it was a cause for concern, but looking back, it was super weird. I'm a skeptic, but this one thing I simply can't explain for these reasons. Last year, around late July, I had been out in my backyard with my dog Boris. He was walking around the yard between our deck and the rocks as he usually does, and just when I was going to get him inside, he stopped for a moment before walking over to our fence. I tried calling him, but he wouldn't budge. So I went over to him and was about to ask what was wrong. I swear I heard somebody say Megan in my own voice. I was freaked out, sure, but I was also tired, so I dismissed it and went on with my day. After that, every once in a while, I would be outside with Boris or in my room falling asleep and just hear myself say Megan from outside. It was always when I was tired or burnt out, so I just never questioned it as I thought I was imagining things. One time, I heard my mom yell about why I was outside so late. I had to go out and ask her what she meant. I should have known then. This one happened 2 weeks ago. January 12th, me and my best friend April had a sleepover and snuck out to go down to the gas station that was about 15 minutes away. We were on our way back together, and to get back into the house, we used the back gate. On our way up to the gate, April had dropped the drink and it had rolled down the driveway. She walked all the way down to get it. I watched her go grab it and then heard her go, "How did you get down here so quick?" So I shouted at her, asking what she meant. She looked back up at me and just stared for a moment. I was being a bit impatient and said something about how it's cold and I wanted to go inside and to hurry up. When we got inside, she didn't tell me what was wrong, but she looked really shaken up. It was about an hour later when both of us heard it. It said, "Megan." This was the first time this happened when I was wide awake. April looked terrified. It was the first time that I realized, holy shit, I'm not imagining things. I looked at her and asked if she could hear it too. She nodded and said that she heard me speak right across the street from my house. I was freaking out. Then, once again, we hear Megan, and we both just stay quiet. Not much else happened that night, but now I know that it's real. My name isn't Megan. I have no idea who Megan is. Okay, this one in particular caught my attention because she remained skeptical for a while. I mean, she heard this a couple times but kept dismissing it. It's only when her friend hears it that she actually realizes that it's not all in her head. For a while, I just wanted to dismiss this one as something pretty simple, like I thought that maybe there was a swing set or something nearby, and when the wind blew, maybe the chains would, you know what I mean, make a sound that sounded like Megan. But the only thing that's weird is this made her mom, and her friend all think that it was actually coming from her voice. That's a pretty specific sound. That's not really something that could be replicated just like that out with a swing set or whatever. So I don't know, this was definitely a strange one. Background information. I have a best friend named Kat. Our song is Umbrella by Rihanna. I was at work today. I work in a gym, and we were really slow, so I had been chatting with Kat on Messenger. She sent me a screenshot of an article about a priest who had a near-death experience and said that he went to hell and demons were singing music by Rihanna. She said, "I read this headline and automatically started singing Umbrella to myself." She sent another article that mentions the actual song Umbrella in the article, so she thought it was a funny coincidence. I finished reading the article and I typed back LOL. As I hit send, I see a woman walking towards my desk. I quickly set my phone down and said, "How can I help you?" This is where it gets weird. She looks at me and says, "Can I have an umbrella?" Then she kind of looks confused, shakes her head a bit, and says, "Jump rope. I need a jump rope." I'm stunned for a second, and I stood up and said, "Yes, of course. Let me run into the back and grab that for you." I glance outside to check the weather, and it's bright and sunny. I bring back the jump rope and hand it to her. She still looks a little dazed and says, "I have no idea why I said umbrella. Weird." Then she thanks me and walks back to the fitness area. I texted Kat the exchange, and we were both equally creeped out. What do you think happened here? Coincidence? I live on an island in southeast Alaska, and in this area there are 3 main indigenous groups, all with stories about the same creature whose name translates to the land otter man, more commonly called the Kushtaka, who is a shapeshifter that will lure you into the ocean or the forest by mimicking a baby's cries or the voice of your loved one. Most of the time when people hear about this, they assume it's a Sasquatch situation where a few people have supposedly seen it. That's not even close to the real story. The truth is, everyone who has lived here for a decent amount of time and doesn't stay away from the woods and ocean has a story. One time, my friend's whole family was camping on another island in a cabin, and her mother and aunt were going fishing to catch dinner. While on the boat, both women heard the voice of my friend's uncle in the woods on the island, asking them to come see something. For a while, they went back and forth with the uncle, asking them to come into the woods, and the woman telling them to come to shore, until they get fed up and shout that they're heading back. When they got back, they naturally asked the uncle what he was doing over in the woods when he was supposed to be watching the kids. He had been with the kids at the cabin the whole time. The school I go to has 4 buildings in it: an elementary, middle school, high school, and the district's main office. There's a lot of people, including me, that have been in the school since kindergarten. This means that I've known people since way back in the day, whether or not they're in the school anymore. So one day in 9th grade, me and my friends were talking about the people that we remember from elementary that moved away. We were sharing memories, and I brought up my childhood best friend. She was my friend in kindergarten, 1st, and 2nd grade, but one day she had just left, so I assumed she left the school. The thing is, nobody remembered her, even my friends who had been in the school since the start. I described her as best as I could, but nobody remembered. We decided to look at the school's Facebook because the school used to post pictures of everyone who had attended. We scrolled all the way back to the years I remembered her still being in the school. Nothing. There were pictures of me and other classmates, but she was my best friend. She should have appeared next to me in at least one photo. But I never recognized anyone to be her. It's weird because even my mom, who has chaperoned my field trips ever since I joined the school, didn't remember her. She knew every close friend I ever had. I turned to look at an app we used to use in elementary. There we could see everyone that has ever been in our class throughout the years we've used it. I just had to look for her school email from back then, but again, nothing. I had vivid memories of us playing that school app together, but somehow her email wasn't saved. You could say that the email wasn't stored because she moved away, but every other kid's email appeared, even those that had moved away. So did this girl, my best friend for 3 years, suddenly disappear out of the school's Facebook, records, and everyone's memories, or did she just never exist? I stopped trying to find her because it was useless, but sometimes I wonder if she ever was truly there with me throughout those years. This is yet another example of someone seemingly just disappearing into thin air. Remember, this was literally her childhood best friend. Think of who your childhood best friend was in elementary school, and imagine if everybody just suddenly forgot who they were. All your friends, your family, nobody remembered them. How would you even begin to explain that or rationalize it in your head?